We are the biggest, we are the largest, we are the highest, we are the greatest, we are the tallest African spiritual platform. I'm always Queen. Hadasha call me Empress Makida. I am Labraska, the Sun Goddess. I am the Spear of Destiny. I am the Woman of Peace. I welcome you to another great episode. We have one of our brothers here who is a Rastafari, going to discuss Rastafari and African spirituality. So today, if you will call me anything, call me Empress Makida. Aha. Ehonomo. And I'm a woman Krebia Akwaba at about Revelations. We are preaching consciousness and we are trying to push an agenda that Africa will liberate itself again. I welcome you, my people. Let's welcome our guest for today. Papa, we welcome you to Revelations.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Great. Today is your first time on this bigger platform. So please kindly pay obeisance to my people. I mean, say hello to them. Introduce yourself to us before we come to this conversation.
Yes, greetings everyone. My name is Priest Dean. I am a member of the Ethiopia Africa Black International Congress, the Bobo Shanti Order of Rastafari. I'm a priest in the order. I'm considered a leading priest, which administers services in the tabernacle. I'm here today to discuss Rastafari and African spirituality, how it walks parallel with each other and how we could bring it together so we could grow and strengthen ourselves in our African mind and come out of the neo-colonialistic Christian whitewash belief system and bring ourselves and marry ourselves into the African spiritual way of life.
We welcome you. Family, this is our guest he's our guest for today. So when you say you were a priest and that you minister to people, can you explain that? In which way? Okay,
so in the Bobo Shanti tradition, in Rastafari, we're known as a priestical order. So we have a tabernacle, and we observe the Sabbath day, which is the seventh day, the Saturday. And on our Sabbath services, we hold service in the tabernacle. And we have 7 leading priests on the altar that ministers to the people that comes to the tabernacle.
Minister in terms of,
minister meaning, when we talk about ministering, we're ministering truth. We're ministering on our history, of our culture, and of how people could see themselves and acknowledge the God within themselves, the God and Goddess within themselves, and be proud as African people to recognize themselves as Africans.
That's what you minister to people?
Yes.
Who is a Bobo Shanti?
Bobo Shanti. Well, Bobo Shanti is a tradition in Jamaica that came out of the Rastafari movement. The Rastafari movement itself was come out of a place called Bacawal, Jamaica, in Spanish Town, where you had, during the time of Marcus Garvey, because I have to preface everything to Marcus Garvey. During the time of Marcus Garvey, who was from Jamaica, he came and he saw the conditions of black people, right? And see how black people in the world itself was treated as second-class citizens, sometimes were treated as subhuman. So when Marcus Garvey came in, he came to awaken the people. And through that awakening, we had people that was coming into Jamaica and coming into the consciousness of themselves as Africans, started to seek a different way of life outside of the white European whitewash of Christianity. So Marcus Garvey taught us that there will be an emperor or a king that will be coming out of Ethiopia. And when we see this king rise, we know that it's African liberation. It's time for African people to rise. And when we see this king rise, we must look to him as our God and as our king. Because we see that in all different various religions and all different various cultures, everyone that has a God that looks like them. Black people are the only people, or African people are the only people that look for a God outside of themselves. And when I say black people or African people, I'm talking more of people in the diaspora. And we talk about the Ma'afa, the transatlantic slave trade. We see that it was designed, religion was designed as a mechanism of control. And when the Europeans came into Africa thousands of years, when Kemet or Egypt was on its heights, you had different philosophers and scholars that came and studied in Kemet, and they extract the information and the knowledge, and when they went back to their home, they came and they whitewashed a lot of the information that was taken out of Kemet. And when they sent in their crusaders and came in back into Africa, they whitewashed it and brought it back to us and started demonizing what we had as our spiritual practice and started demonizing it as voodoo, as witchcraft, as paganism. And when the conquest of Africa was introduced or was happening, what happened to me is that it basically put aside African spiritual practices and they inject this European way of life in terms of spiritual or in terms of religion, because I don't call it spirituality, I call their version of it, I call it religion, right? So when they interjected their religion, it was more of a form of control, a form of teaching us to be better slaves and to recognize them as our savior and our masters. So in that awakening, the people of Jamaica, who was in their consciousness of self, which was considered the lowest part of society, when they start coming into that consciousness of themselves, this is how the Rastafari movement was birthed, right? When we saw Haile Selassie that was coronated on November 1930 in Ethiopia, the world was watching and seeing, and this was a time for the black man to see themselves and black women to see themselves as kings and queens, because we never really saw ourselves in that nature, because for us as people that was taken to the diaspora, the only history that we got was from the point of slavery until now. We didn't learn about the greatness of African people, the great dynasties that existed prior to that interruption of history. So now we're into the consciousness of ourselves, and when we saw this king that was crowned, we said that this is our leader. This is who we decide to follow. So this is how Rastafari was coined in a sense. We could go into a long-term conversation about just that itself, but in essence, this is how Rastafari was coined based on the coronation of Haile Selassie, who was known as Rastafari at his birth.
So do you believe in any God?
Yes, I do. I believe in the God in me. Because in order to recognize anyone or anything as a God, you have to first see the God in yourself. Religion on a whole always taught us to look outside of ourselves for God. Look to somebody for your savior. Look to somebody to save you. But when you think about it, if we are created in the image and the likeness of our source, then we are God, the God that dwells within us. Because when we pray, we think we're praying to something, but we're really praying to the consciousness of God within ourselves. So when Rastafari see each other and we talk, we say I and I, or we refer to self as the I, which is that God that's within you. I recognize the God within you. Like, I see you as Empress Makiba. I see you as a goddess because I recognize that female, feminine energy of God that dwells within you. As so as myself, when I see myself as the God that dwells within me. So for me, in understanding the presence of God, I have to first understand the God within myself.
You are watching the biggest and the largest. So your God is the only God that is within you. But have you heard about the Supreme Being? Is there anybody who created this universe?
Of course. And like I said before, we are creating the image and likeness of our Creator, right? In this physical form that we see ourselves in. But we are a spiritual being having a human experience, not a physical being having a spiritual experience. So for me, everything starts with the spirit, the essence of the universe, the essence of our source. Because when we speak of God in a masculine term, right? But we know that it's a divine male and feminine energy.
So what is your concept of the source? The creator of this universe or the Supreme Being, what's your concept?
Well, the concept of source energy that created the universe, for me, in my own humble opinion, it's more of, how can I put it? The best way to put it. It's like the energy of the sun, right? It's like electricity. You have these lights, and the energy that feed power to these lights so the lights could reflect itself. That's what you call your source energy, right? The lights itself is just a physical aspect but the spirit that dwells, or the energy that dwells within it, that's what illuminates and shines out. So for me, the aspect of God is just the divine source of the energy. It could be the water, it could be the wind, it could be the sun, it could be the moon, it could be the stars, it could be the earth, right? So nature within itself, to me, is the ultimate experience and presence of God that manifests itself in this 3D reality, which is us.
So in the kingdom of Bombo Shanti, what do you believe, or what do you think after your death? What happened to you?
Okay, so for us, I believe personally in reincarnation, because energy never dies. We are energy. This physical flesh, it has an expiration date. But your essence, your being within itself, that energy never dies. So at some point, you return back to that source, whatever your conception of that source is. In our spiritual practice, or in the Bobo Shanti tradition, we see Africa as Zion, what they refer to as heaven. Africa is our heaven. Africa is our Zion in this physical realm, in this physical space, right? But we see that once you transition, learning about African spirituality, your essence, your source, your essence return back to that source to come back again to complete whatever journey or mission that you're supposed to fulfill.
You are watching The Biggest. Your topic is Rastafari and African spirituality. What is African spirituality?
African spirituality to me it has many different definitions, because you have many different African spiritual practices. Like here in Ghana, you have the Akan. They have their own spiritual practice within that tribe. You know, you have the Gang. They have their own, you know what I mean? You have in Nigeria, you have Yoruba. They have their own spiritual practice. You know, you have Egbo. They have their own spiritual practice. So for me, African spirituality on a whole entire slope of looking at things, for me, is more being in alignment with nature, being in alignment with the different energies that governs nature within itself, and learning how to alchemize these different energies to use it within your life to move your life forward in a better direction.
Family, let me leave this question for you people to answer before I ask him. Seriously, I love the fact that our brothers are coming home, but the problem is spirituality. Because when you say African spirituality and you don't take care, you will miss our culture and our way of life with spirituality. So I want to understand, when you say the Ghana people have their spirituality and these people also have their spirituality, what do you mean by that? Is it their culture? What's the difference between their spirituality, their culture, and their way of life?
Well, I mean, just interacting, going to different countries on the continent and seeing how they relate within their spiritual practice. There's no difference. It's the same, but your terminology for a deity or for something might be different than the next person's terminology or what they might call it. But the essence is one and the same. So when you deal with religion, you might find different intricacies within religion, like, oh, I go to church on Saturday, or I go to church on Sunday, or I eat meat or I don't eat meat, or I wear dress or I don't wear dress. So these different intricacies sometimes divide us. But on a spiritual level, when you're communicating with someone who see themselves as a spiritual person, you could sit and have a conversation about spirituality, and the conversation would be basically the same, because the concepts of what we would discuss eternally is what is the essence of God or the goddess. We talk about love, we talk about respect, we talk about how we deal with each other, how we deal with nature, how we deal with the animals, how we coincide ourselves with this existence of this planet Earth that we dwell on.
Is there any initiation one has to go through to become a priest for the Bombo Shantis?
Well, there's not necessarily initiation, but it's more of where you develop yourself in terms of your consciousness, in terms of knowing and understanding how to teach people to look for the God within themselves, because we're not teaching them about looking outside of themselves for God, or looking to the sky for God, or looking to an actual physical person for God. We're teaching you the understanding of how to relate to the God within yourself. Once you can relate to the God within yourself, then it's easy for you to see my brother or my sister and see the God within them. And then you can see their good works, because in our belief system, you know, we say that man and woman of right is God, and God is in flesh. So when you try to live to the righteousness within yourself, now you're living the way and the life of how God intended for you to live, by living that righteousness in your life and incorporating in your daily livity. So that's why we say it's not a religion, it's a livity, because it's something that you don't go 5-6 days out the week and you do all types of follies, and then you go to church on Sunday or Saturday and say, oh, God forgive me, and then everything is good. It's a daily walk. It's a daily journey. It's something that you have to build upon to get to the highest level of consciousness within yourselves.
You are watching The Biggest. Okay, so your topic is Rastafari and African spirituality. Please take us through.
Well, yes, so, you know, like I said, from my humble opinion in terms of Africans, like everyone might, like you said earlier about, you know, the differences within the culture. You know, for me, within Rastafari, I see a lot of similarities when I look into African spiritual practice, like Yoruba, Ifa, right? I see, you know, even the times of prayer, the time of how you pay honor to your ancestors. In the Rastafari culture, we don't really call it ancestral worship, but if we're talking about ancestors like Marcus Garvey or Haile Selassie or Empress Menen, right, or Prince Emmanuel, and these people who are our forerunners within our tradition, right? When we honor them, we're giving honor to ancestors, because these are people that transitioned, right? So when we look at that and we see how we call upon other ancestors who were part of the movement, part of the struggle, Nana Kwame Nkrumah, Stephen Biko, Patrice Lumumba, you know, Winnie Mandela, all these people that came in and put in work in the liberation and the consciousness of black people universally. You know, we get to understand that we are honoring ancestors without our knowledge of that's what it really is. So for me, I'm saying that for us as Rastafari, that is something that we have to take a look at within that aspect of how we could marry the two and make it a perfect union. Because, you know, we're coming from a Christian background. So we still have certain Christian mindset as when you read to the Bible. You know, there's certain belief system that they still hold on to that you find in the Bible, wherein that if you look at it from an African aspect, that doesn't fit us, that doesn't belong to us, because we're talking about reading from the Bible in terms of the King James Version of the Bible in particular. Going through that particular book, you know, that book is missing a lot of different information that is out there about us as a people. A lot of people take the Bible as a historical book, and it's not really a historical book. For me, the Bible is more of a philosophical book. I don't see it as a, you know, a lot of Christian people take it as this is their history. They start from Genesis to Revelation, and that's it. And information that's there, you know, when you you go to Kemet and you look at the niches on the pyramids, you see that our history expands way beyond the 6,000 years of what the Bible speaks on. You know, we're talking about thousands of years, millions of years that our people have been in existence on this planet. So to kind of frame that into a version, and when we talk about a version, we're talking about in particularly the King James Version of the Bible. You know, when you see that book was designed as a weapon of control, to control the masses. So breaking that chain, breaking that cycle, I see that we have to go beyond just that Bible. We have to really expand ourselves and research, especially in this age of information, this information age that we're in. To be ignorant is a choice, because you could go and you could put in anything you want into a search engine, and that information will come forward. So we see that there was information that was buried and kept from us as a people that now we're getting more information and getting more access to. So our mindset have to be shifted from what we have been taught and what we have been programmed to learn.
You are watching The Biggest. Let me ask this. As Bombo Shanti, you people, I don't want to use the word reference the universe. You respect everything in the universe. Trees, you connect with everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
So do you believe in killing of animals?
Well, in learning about African spiritual practices, we know that there is where you have the animal as a sacrifice. Now, you talk to some people and they'll shy away from that. And they say, oh, but then when you for me, for me personally, in my growth and in my learning and understanding about ritual work.
I want to understand you from your Bombo Shanti perspective.
Right. Well,
do you believe in...
If that's what I'm saying. For me, speaking from a Bobo Shanti perspective, all my Bobo Shanti brothers and sisters don't see that perspective. And that's why I'm saying that even what I'm speaking on right now, a lot of them might not agree with what I'm saying, because they're more from this Christian mindset that we don't do animal sacrifices anymore, right?
You were a priest for the Bombo
priest,
Shantis,
yes,
okay?
Yes.
So you came to talk about the Rastafari. That is you, the Bombo Shantis,
yes,
before African spirituality.
Yes.
So I don't want you to put this question by African spirituality. Put this question by the Bobo Shantis, the Rastafari community.
So in speaking,
where do you people put killing of animals?
Yeah, from the Bobo Shanti principle, that is not something that is common practice, and that is not something that is what we support in terms, because we see that as a pagan part of the tradition. If you look into the Old Testament of the Bible, they used to talk about the sacrifices of animals, right? And when they come into the New Testament, they say Christ came and bear the ultimate sacrifice. So once he bear the ultimate sacrifice, there was no more need of animal sacrifices, because Christ came and bear the ultimate sacrifice for all. So from that aspect, in the Bobo Shanti tradition, that is something that is not recognized.
To sacrifice an animal or to kill an animal?
Yeah, to sacrifice an animal, yes.
So if that is the case, how then can you put the Rastafari and African spirituality together? Okay. How can they marry? Because these people believe in animal sacrifice or rituals.
Right. But even for me, even within the ritual space, it's not only animals that's being used. People use herbs. They make bots. They use herbs because that's one of the first form of the sacrifice. You pick herbs.
No, now I want to know about the animal side.
Yes.
Bobo Shanti doesn't accept you should sacrifice animals. Now you are saying you are looking for how Rastafari and Bobo Shanti can marry African spirituality. Right. Am I correct?
Yes.
So this is something this part don't do. And this is something this part are doing. So I want to know how we can emerge. How are they going to marry?
Right, and that's when it comes to educating yourself and understanding what our ancestors used to practice. Now, when I said coming from Jamaica, there are certain traditions that we do that we don't have a name that we put to it. We just call it that, oh, my grandmother did this, or my grandfather used to do this. So I do it because it's something that in our culture we do, right? For example, like in Jamaica, when you buy a piece of land and you want to bless the land, we normally kill a goat, right? And sprinkle the blood on the land to bless the land, right? But that's not something that is written in our culture as something that culturally or spiritually or in a religious aspect, this is what we do. This is just something that we do based on tradition that was passed down from our grandmother, our great-grandmother, or our great-grandfather coming down. So we end up doing these things in a way and not recognizing, because like I said, being in the diaspora and through the transatlantic slave trade, you know, these things were taught as bad. These things were taught as being as evil, as witchcraft. So in the mindset of our people, these are the things that stuck with us in that colonial mindset. So for me, in traveling Africa, going to 5 different countries in Africa, Togo, Benin, Nigeria, and seeing all the different spiritual practices that was practiced in these different parts, and get to understand that these are what our ancestors used, the tools that we use to sustain ourselves, to sustain our society. And even in studying history, and we see that a lot of the rebellions that happened on the slave plantations in the West, you know, they had to drop the European version of Christianity, and they had to call back on their ancestors to give them the strength to aid them in the revolt for their freedom. So a lot of these, if you look at Haiti in 1804, that rebellion was the largest rebellion in the Western, the first slave rebellion, successful slave rebellion in the Western Hemisphere. And how they were able to achieve that was by going back to their African spiritual practices and calling upon their ancestors and their deities to give them the strength and the fortitude to push through and to gain their freedom. So these are the things that I think as a people.
Okay, so let's look at this. You using herbs and all that for spirituality, and also calling your ancestors in times of need, and also doing Efa. Is this our way of life, our culture, or it is spirituality?
It's both. It's both, because spirituality is a way of life. It's in your everyday. It's in your everyday. When you get up and you take water to drink, right? When you wake up and you're thankful, you show gratitude. You wake up in the morning, you show gratitude for waking up in the morning. So spirituality for me is a way of life. There's no separate. It's enmeshed in your culture. Because like I said, in growing up and seeing my grandmother and my aunties, and they kill a goat. And put
That's what I'm saying, our way of life, our culture.
Yeah, but the way of life to me is enmeshed in our spiritual practices, because these things are one and the same.
So if these things are one in the same, then what are the deities doing in this? What have they got to do with this? Because let's use the word recipe. The recipe my great mother was using, my mother is using it, my aunties are using, I'm now using, it becomes our way of life or our culture. The way they kill goats and put the blood there, your ancestor was doing it, your great-grandparents came to see it, they were also doing it. It becomes their way of life or their culture. So in this family, when you buy a land, you do ra-ra-ra-ra-ra. It becomes our way of life, our culture. So what if spirituality is our way of life? Then where do we place the deities? Well,
the deities, for me, in terms of when you talk about African spirituality, the deities is just a way of explaining the different energies that govern nature, right? And for us, for me, in my understanding of the different deities and what I have learned so far is that these are different energies that govern a certain aspect of your life. It's just like your body, the hand, the foot, everything, but they all serve a certain part of the body, but yet they come together as one for the body to function. Right? So these different deities, you know, it might sound to people that, or you're worshiping different gods, but when you put them all together, it's really one, but it's just different aspect of the principle of these energies, that when you calling upon a certain rain, if you want rain to come, you know that you have to do certain things for the rain to come. So it's like you call on that aspect of, so the orishas, the different deities are specific to these different entities or different energies.
To govern us.
To govern us.
There's entities and we. Who is powerful on this plane?
On this plane?
Yes.
Well, these deities, they only manifest through us, because we're the only one that manifests.
So how can they govern us? If they manifest through us, it means without us, they are nothing. They will not be known. Well, they don't belong here.
Well,
so how do we have to allow these deities to govern us? Because like you said, they are relevant because of us.
Yes.
So why should we allow them rather to govern us?
Well, like I said, when we're speaking of our deities, we're speaking them of a person, But I'm talking about as an energy that govern me, that govern myself. These different aspects of God are within me, because we are all a makeup of everything within the universe. We are all a makeup of the same thing that makes up the stars, the same thing that makes up the moon, the same thing that makes up the sun, same thing that makes up the earth. All these molecules and different elements is what make us, right? So I'm saying that for anything to be relevant, we are the ones that manifest these things into the reality.
Exactly. So the deities, why should we access them or allow them to govern us? That's the point.
Well, the point is that in our understanding of cosmology and how we as people were trying to make sense of our existence here, we see these different energies and we give it a name, we give it a personality, we give it these things so we could understand it and explain it better, so we could make it relevant to us. Because we all seek something higher. We all seek that's just something greater than us here in this universe. So when you look through religion,
we seek something that is greater than us.
Yes.
In this universe.
Yes.
Is there anything that is greater than mankind in this universe?
No.
This is very plain.
No.
So is it right to seek or wrong?
No, that's what I'm saying. Because of how we were taught and what we have learned. You know, these are things that was taught to us through the generations coming down. That if you're a Christian and all your family study Christianity, you learn about Christ. You don't learn anything else. So this will encompass your life, and you teach it to your children, and their children teach it to their children. So for us, we're always seeking a higher understanding of who we are, where we came from, who created us. You know, the ultimate story is that the chicken or the egg, which one came first? You know, and people have been grappling with this answer or this question for millennia, for a long time. So for me, in my own understanding, I know that, you know, it's easy when you give something a name, so you know how to identify it, how to relate to it. But yet, all these things, if you're not conscious of yourself and you don't know how to relate it to you in your own personal life. So that's when I refer to the deities or the different deities that we call upon within the African spiritual system. You know, I call them different energies, because these different energies come together to create what we call this physical plane, to create what we call ourselves as humans who live within this existence, within this reality, right? So for me, it's more of not a actual physical thing or person, but it's more of how this energy that I could extract from nature to use it into my life, into my existence, into my experience, into this earth plane.
You are watching the biggest and the largest. So combining Rastafari and African spirituality, what can you take out of African spirituality to make these two marry confidently? And what will you take from Rastafari, the Bombo Shanties, to make these two couples marry peacefully? Yeah.
So for me, for the Bobo Shanti side of it, from Rastafari side of it, you know, Rastafari was started as a black power movement, right? It was an answer to white colonialism. So learning about us as a people and our history as a people, learning to build Africa, that all Africans in the diaspora and on the continent have to unite to bring back Africa as its ancient glory, right? That mindset of organizing and centralizing, of building industries, of the works that Marcus Garvey laid and set as a foundation for us to build upon by creating our own shipping companies, our own, now we're moving into a technological age, our own tech companies. You know, we should have our own Facebook, our own Google. We should have our own things that these people who control these situations, they won't have control over us. So when Marcus Garvey came and he saw that, where is the black man leadership? Where is the black man printing press? Where is the black? So he said he had to create these things because these things was not created by us. So we have to understand that, you know, the power of the pen, the written press, those who control it, control the narrative, control the story. So in this situation, it's like the lion and the hunter. The hunter is the one that's always telling the story. And we don't see the lion giving his story. So we as black people, as African people, we have to learn to give our story. So now for me, in terms of Bobo Shanti principles and practices, in terms of the Pan-African movement, seeing that as a black man and a black woman, that your home is here on this continent. You belong here. This is where you belong, right? We have to bring back our resources, our knowledge, to come back and help our brothers and sisters here to build back the continent. In African spirituality, what we need to bring and merge is that we need to take the strength of learning to honor your ancestors. We have to take the strength of learning of the different deities or energies or forces that are here to help us. It's like alchemy. You know, you have to learn how to use the medicine. You have to learn how to use the different energy to create. So for me, I think that is something that we have to look at. And it takes education, it takes knowledge, and it takes conversation of how you can marry the two. Because you might have people, you know, the elders that's stuck in a certain mindset, that thinking that, oh no, you know, this is not something that we see as something that is good. But then you can't say that you're talking about coming to Africa. You can't see yourself talking about being African without looking at these spiritual practices that our ancestors have been doing for centuries, right? And not thinking that it's something that we need to incorporate in our spiritual practice as well.
You are watching The Biggest. My last question, then I will let you. Bobo Shantis, Rastafari, and weed, India herb.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you place these three?
Okay.
Are they friends?
Well, herb. They call it weed, but weed is a herb. The marijuana. Cannabis, the proper name.
Yes.
The cannabis.
Yes.
Cannabis is a herb.
Uh-huh.
It's a herb that's used for medicinal purposes. Right? We see that there's a lot of medicinal healing that you could use with herbs. Not necessarily that you have to ingest it by smoke, but you could extract the oils that's inside of the herb that is good, that has a lot of healing powers to it. Right? So for us as Rastafari, even when you ingest it by smoking, or even if you ingest it by eating, you know, the euphoric vibration that you get from it, it says that it brings you to a higher meditation within yourself, right? I know there's a lot of debates on that, because a lot of people in society thinking that, oh, they smoke this herb, or they become mad, or they become lazy, or they become worthless. But you have people that don't smoke herb and are mad and are lazy and are worthless. So for me, that is a mindset. You have people that smoke herb. If you look right now, there's a lot of people out there, like in the Americas, for example. Marijuana is legal in certain states, not just for medical purposes, but also for recreational use. And I know a lot of people who are CEOs, people who are entrepreneurs, people who are doing big things that use marijuana. They might have their different reasons, but for us within our practice, it's more for our spiritual use. It's more for our health use as medicine.
Okay, so now I want you to tell us, since you've been in Ghana for some time, you are an African, but let's talk about Africa continent as a whole, looking at us. 2 things you think we should do away with if we want to become big, and 2 things you think we should add to become bigger.
Okay. The first thing that we have to do away with is the dependency of white colonialism. We give these colonizers too much power, right? Too much power, and thinking that we give them a savior complex. And the reason why I say we give them a savior complex is because of how they come into how they are now ruling and colonizing not just Africa, but the globe itself. Because when you think about it, melanated people on a whole, we are more than them. Melanated people, black people around the world, whether they want to recognize themselves as black or not. I'm talking about people in India. They have melanin in their skin, but they don't see themselves as black, right? Because of how black people were portrayed to the world. They themselves, some of them have darker complexion than us, They don't see themselves as black. They see themselves as Indian, right? So when you bring everything together, everybody all over the different parts of the world, right, that live in subtropic areas where the melanin is needed to survive in these areas, right? Our European colonizers, they come from an area of the world that is, melanin is not needed, so they don't have the melanin to protect them from the sun, because they're in colder places, talking about from an anthropological point, right? So we need to get away with that colonial mindset that we need Europeans to help us and to make us better. That's one of the things that we need to get rid of, right? The second thing that we need to get rid of is that the tribalism. You know, we separate ourselves. You are this, you are that, you are this, you are that. Now we move from tribalism now to, oh, I'm Christian, I'm Muslim. Just Christian, oh, I'm Baptist, I'm Catholic, I'm Presbyterian, you know, I'm Anglican. So we see all these different divisions. We like to label and separate ourselves. And every chance we get, we separate ourselves. I think we have to do away with that separation and see ourselves as who we are. We are Africans. You know, Peter Tosh sing a song, it says, no matter where you come from, as long as you're a black man, you're African. No matter your complexion or your nationality, you know, your identity is an African. So if we see ourselves as African first, if we see ourselves coming from the Pan-African mindset that Haile Selassie, that Kwame Nkrumah tried to invoke upon the continent, all these great leaders that came and was talking from a Pan-African mindset that said that we have to do away all these things and come under one common goal, which is seeing ourselves as Africans first, right? I think once we do away with those things, it will bring us stronger. Because I think the only thing that we haven't tried as a people is unity. We talk about it, but I don't think we put that into a practical practice, right? Because we have these little things that divide us, you know? And these are the things that I think as African people that we need to do away with. What we need to add to make us stronger, right? Africa is the breadbasket of the world. Everything is here. Africa is lacking nothing. But the greatest resource of any nation is its people. Because no matter how much gold we have under the ground, if the people is not here to mine it and bring it, it's of no use. So we as the people, as the greatest resource, we have to now look into ourselves and start to bring all our skills, you know, all our finances. When you look into the West, right, just in America, using America as an example, Africans in America, right, they spend $2 trillion a year. $2 trillion. That's higher than a lot of GDPs in a lot of these countries on the continent. How can we aggregate that money together? Bring it to come and do things here on the continent. Help our brothers and sisters come together here on the continent to bring these resources that we have on the ground. We don't need a white man to come and bring their equipment or the Chinese to bring their equipment, because they're looking at us like, oh, we have to come and teach you how to do this. We have to come and do this for you because you're babies. You don't know how to take care of yourselves. So they have to come and show us. But when you look at ancient Kemet, when you look at these ancient kingdoms in Africa, when you look at Mali, Timbuktu, all these great places, you know, you see that we were in control of our own destiny. We created kingdoms. When they came into Africa, we wasn't living in mud houses and things like that. We had great civilizations that we established. So why can't we create that for ourselves? So like I said, the resource that was taken away from Africa that caused that lack, to me, was the people. We took away some of the greatest priests, we took some of the greatest architects, some of the greatest farmers, and they went to the West and they built their kingdom for them. If you look at the gifts that black people bring and the inventions that black people bring, as being the simple as a stoplight. The stoplight was invented by a black man. A lot of people don't really understand that. The elevator, the gas mask, the refrigerator, right? A lot of these things was invented by our brothers and sisters. So we have greatness within us. There's nothing that we need. All we need are brothers and sisters that's here on the continent that goes to these universities in Europe and in America, that pulls a brain drain from the continent. Our leaders need to bring incentives for these people, for our people to come back home, to help build back the continent. And I think that's something that we need to really consider.
You are watching the biggest. Okay, they are saying our time is done. So I want you to advise us as people, your last words, and then you leave your social media handles and all.
My people, I appeal to you. We have to put away our differences as people, as African people. We have to put away our petty differences, our tribalism, the things that divide us. Oh, you're from America. Oh, you're from Africa. The propaganda machine has used that as a tool to divide us and to confuse us, so we don't see the greatness within ourselves. We don't see the strength and the unity within numbers. So we have to understand that we are brothers and sisters, not just in word, but in deed and in truth. We have to really see that within ourselves. When I see you coming from the West, coming from Jamaica, from America, when we come here, we see you as our brothers and sisters. Despite what the propaganda machine has reeled about the differences between Africans in the diaspora and Africans on the continent, you know, we have to see ourselves. We can't let that be a separation from us. We have to learn how to come together as a unit, as a family, because we're coming back together as a family. And we have to welcome each other into the space and know that each one teach one, each one help one. I have something that I can bring to strengthen you, and you have something that you could give to strengthen me. And that is where we will have to come together on one common goal in order to build back Africa to its ancient glory. And we know that Africa was great before, and it shall be great again.
Yeah, Africa will be great again. She just mentioned the thing. Me, I am telling you, whether I'm gone, I will be gone by then. But trust me, you remember, Africa will be great again. I'm so confident in my spirit that Africa will be great again by hook or crook.
Yes.
We keep moving.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming. Any social media handles?
Yes, Akoma Healing Arts. You go on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, our website, www.akomahealingarts.org. You know, we host tours. That's one of my work in terms of bridging the gap between the diaspora and the continent. You know, we host tours and we bring our brothers and sisters from the diaspora and bring them to the continent so they could meet back their family. They could see their culture, they could see where their people come from. We could see the similarities that we all share, these little fine little intricacies of what we share together. When we come back, we say, oh, this makes sense why we do this. Oh, that man look like my uncle. Oh, that man look like my brother. We see ourselves within each other. So the more we get to travel here, the more that we see that there's more that we have in common that we have apart. And these are the commonalities that we need to have to bridge that gap so we could reunite the family again.
Thank you so much for coming. Ebusia, that's his social media handles. If there's any question I didn't ask, you can ask him from there and he will get through to you. Thank you so much for coming. We do appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching The Biggest. I'm always your annoying host,